Hello there, welcome back to another video. Today I am out in my garden and I want to give you guys a full garden tour. It is the beginning of August. I haven't shared with you guys much about the garden since I planted it. I meant to, but life has just been really busy and we've been traveling a lot. So sorry I have not given you a tour before, but I will now. Some of the parts of the garden I'm really happy with, are growing really great. Some of the parts are not, and I'm a little disappointed in. So I will share that all with you today, what parts are growing really well and what are not doing so well. I'll start off with my raised beds you can see right behind me, and this is the part of the garden that I am most happy about. It has been growing really well over these last couple months. Let's start off with this first raised bed right here. On this end of the bed, I have two 4th of July tomato plants. They're just like your regular big round red tomatoes. And I have some tomatoes that are growing. Each of these have, let's see, this one has like 3 tomatoes, this one has 2. And they still have to get bigger before they turn red, but the plants they're a little smaller than my other tomato plants, but they're still pretty healthy and producing tomatoes. Over here, I have beans, bush beans, also back in here and along, just kind of scattered everywhere on this half of the bed. We just got the first one a couple days ago. I planted them a little later. They didn't go as fast as I'd like them to. So we're just starting to get beans now in August, which ideally I'd like to get them earlier, but it's okay. They have flowers all over them. Little beans that are growing that'll be ready in probably a week or so, and they'll just keep producing beans. Over here on this side, I have a lot of the cool weather crops that I planted, were the first things I planted in this bed this year, and surprisingly, actually a lot of them are still doing really well, even though it has been in the 90s recently. So I still have kale that's producing and doing well. I have a few plants, also Swiss chard back here. This is getting big and just looking the stems are really red and healthy. The lettuce, all the lettuce and spinach have basically stopped. I ripped all the spinach out because that was basically done, and I want to plant some more things where the spinach was, which is on the other side of the bed. But the other cool season crops are actually producing more, which I am really surprised about. And the same thing with the peas. So I have peas growing up the outside of these tomato cages, and they kind of had their first wave of harvest, and they had a bunch of peas, and then they kind of stopped, and I thought they were done, but I just left them there. And then maybe a few weeks ago they started new growth and more flowers, and now we're actually getting a lot more snap peas, even though those are also cool weather crops. So they kind of had a second wave and are doing really well. Now let's talk about the other tomatoes in this bed. So I have a yellow pear tomato here, which produces little cherry sized yellow tomatoes in the shape of a pear, as you can probably guess from the name. This is a red cherry tomato, then over here is more yellow pear tomatoes. And they're all doing really well. They have tons and tons of fruit, and they're all green. They just need to get to their color. And I've been waiting for that to happen. It's taking longer than I'd like. They just have it's the right size and everything, and there's tons of it, and on all of these plants it just needs to change color now and ripen. So I'm really excited because probably I'm thinking 2 weeks from now I'm gonna have loads and loads of tomatoes coming in, these little cherry ones and all of that, and they just keep having more flowers everywhere and keep producing more. They just need to now ripen so that we can actually eat them. Now let's move on to the second raised bed, which is the new one I built this year. This one is really exploding in growth. It's just green everywhere, and I'm really excited about this one. First off, I have tomatoes. This is kind of the same story as the tomatoes in my other raised bed. They're all really healthy, really big, really green, and have a lot of little fruits on them that they just need to ripen. And there's a lot of flowers as well. I think I'll get a ton of tomatoes this year. Most of the ones in this bed are the cherry tomatoes or the yellow pear tomatoes. I only have a few plants that are the bigger tomatoes, like the regular size. So I just have to wait for these to ripen and be patient, and I think they'll hopefully ripen pretty soon. They're at the right size now. So I'm really excited because, as I said, in a few weeks I think I'll have loads and loads of delicious tomatoes. Right up the middle of this raised bed, I have this trellis with cucumbers on it. I have lemon cucumbers, which are basically like a round yellow cucumber, and then just a regular green cucumber. I can't remember the exact variety, but they're doing pretty well. They've had a bunch of flowers, but all the flowers now are like kind of like shriveled, and I don't know whether that's just because the fruit is starting to grow, because I know like the flower dies and falls off once it's pollinated so that the fruit can grow, or if it's just because of the heat and the flowers died. I don't know. They were looking really well earlier this week, but now I don't see like the big open flowers. So I guess I'll just have to wait and see whether that's just because the fruit is starting to grow, or because the flowers have just the plants gotten really hot and the flowers aren't doing very well. I'm really hoping it's because the fruit is starting to grow and the flowers aren't really needed anymore, and that's why they're dying, because I have a ton of flowers and that would mean like a ton of cucumbers will be coming soon. But I guess I'll just have to wait and see. The other things I have in this bed are beans, and then like the border of like herbs and flowers. The beans are basically doing as well as the ones in the other bed. They have flowers and little baby beans that are gonna get big soon. So that's really exciting. Also, I have snapdragons in this bed, which just started blooming, and I love snapdragons. They're really pretty, and I was really excited about that. That's it for these beds, and now let's move on to a part of the garden that I'm not so excited about. That is my in-ground bed right here behind me, and as you can see, there's not a lot growing here compared to the raised beds. So I left about 2 weeks after I planted the whole garden in the summer. So a lot of the stuff takes like 7 to 14 days to germinate. So a lot of it in this bed hadn't come up by the time I left. So I was kind of like, okay, it'll just probably come up in the next few days while we're gone. We had someone come water it, but a lot of them didn't. And I'm still trying to figure out why. I think a lot of it is the soil here is not very good. So that might be a part of it. But basically, the long story short, a lot of the seeds didn't sprout. So I replanted some squash and a few other things, which are now slowly growing. They're still really tiny, but I don't know if I'll get any fruit off of them because it's already the beginning of August. But hopefully I will. Squash grow pretty fast and really well, so I'm really hoping we'll get at least some from this bed. There's definitely still some stuff growing here, but it's not as much as like I wanted to. I like planted rows and rows, like several rows of beans and peas and like spinach and lettuce, and very little of that came up. So it's still producing, there's still stuff here, but it's not nearly as much as I planned or wanted. Hopefully I'll at least get some things out of this, like squash. Now let's move over to the final spot in my garden, which is my containers on my deck. I'm fairly happy with these. It's mostly tomatoes along with just a few other plants. The tomatoes are doing pretty well. They are not quite as big and bushy as the ones in the raised beds, but they still have some fruit, and that will hopefully get ripe soon. And I think I'll still get quite a few tomatoes from these tomato plants. Like this one especially has like, a group of fruit here and here, down here, over here, down, like everywhere. So I think I'll still get a lot of tomatoes, even though they're not quite as bushy and healthy as the ones on my raised beds. Right here I also have some basil that I planted a couple weeks ago because the stuff I planted from seed never really took off. It's doing pretty well. I've been harvesting from it. So that's like the main other thing I have on the deck. All right, so there you have it. That's my full garden tour here at the beginning of August. As you can see, it's kind of a mixed report. Some parts of the garden are doing really well, like my raised beds. Some parts, like my in-ground plot, is not really doing very well. I think a lot of these are just for different reasons. I think soil is a huge factor of why like the in-ground plot isn't doing as well. So I still have to just kind of figure out why things are the way they are and how this will affect my plans for next year. But overall, I am fairly happy with my garden this year, especially the raised beds with kind of this intensive planting, like packing as much as you can into the space you have. So, and they're looking really beautiful and just overflowing with green and plants. And I think, as I said, like in probably like 2 weeks from now, I will be getting tons of tomatoes, beans, peas, hopefully cucumbers. It's right around the corner and I'm really excited for that. So thank you for watching. Have a great day.